Welcome back. Money is something many of us avoid talking about, of course, even with our closest friends. But after content producer Sophie Hallwright found herself opening up about finances to her bestie Vic, they realised these conversations were worth sharing with the world.
From there, the Curve podcast was born, clocking more than 2 million listens and empowering women to feel confident to take control of their financial freedom. Victoria and Sophie join us live from London. Hello. Nice to see you both. Sophie, we'll start with you. This all came after you were confiding in Vic for knowledge around money. Why is it important that women especially open up more about these sorts of conversations, do you think?
Oh, I just think when you don't talk about it, you don't learn. Like, Vic and I were at school together. We were really good friends. We both went to university. And, yeah, in our late 20s, I was heading into some serious debt. And Vic was, like, you know, on track to retire with millions. And I just looked around and I was like, what am I doing so wrong? And so many of our friends were the same. So I think that, you know, Vic was really lucky. She grew up with a mum that was an accountant. She invested when she was, like, 9 years old. And I just think the more that you talk about this and normalize asking questions, like, I mean, the podcast started because I was just asking so many questions. Like, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And I think that gave everyone else permission to feel like it's okay to not know. We were never taught this stuff. But yeah, ultimately, that kind of information is like quite life-changing, and I'm in a completely different financial situation now. So.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Vic, your show now has a huge following. What have you noticed listeners want to learn most about? What do they need to get from you guys?
Oh, honestly, it's such a broad range. Like, we are targeting kind of a 25 to 45-year-old woman, or, you know, anyone that's been left out of the finance conversation. And within that time frame, you have so many, I guess, financial milestones, whether it's, you know, your first pay rise, whether it's starting a family, getting married, getting into a relationship, and then having children, divorce, like, there's so many things in there. And so we have such a broad range of conversations. I think the overarching one for the women that we speak to in our community is probably how they can set up their kids for a great financial future, and how, you know, just talking about the intergenerational wealth and any topic that we talk about investing for kids just like absolutely pops off. Yeah.
So if you've got some great advice for parents becoming empty nesters, what do they need to start considering once kids leave home?
I think that there's this inherently female approach to life where we always care about and think about everyone around us. And yeah, I look at my mum and the way that she's just dedicated her life to me and my brother and sister. And it was only recently a trip home, actually, where I sat down with her and I was like, what do you want? You know, like, what kind of life do you want to live? And I think that when kids have left home, you're in this really unique position to actually look at your life and how you're living it, the time that you spend. And, you know, for my mum, for example, like, I actually had to ask her, how long do you want to work? You know, do you want to work, or do you feel like you have to work? And I think that there's a lot of anxiety about the idea of running out of money or not having enough to leave behind. So actually what I said to my mum was, like, please be selfish. Like, think about really what it is that you want, and then we can work backwards in terms of what money you need to get there or to live the kind of life that you want. So I think it's really just like, actually, for the first time ever, maybe be a little bit selfish with what you do with your money.
Yeah, Vic, I suppose a lot of empty nesters are thinking, well, it's too late. I should have started this stuff when I was 20 or 30. Or like Vic, I should have started investing when I was 9 years old. Is it ever too late to start? And if not, how do you get started at that chapter?
No, it is never too late to start. And that's a question, or, you know, a comment that we get a lot from women in our community is that, you know, I've left it too late. And if you've got a few years left in your life, you can start investing. There's so many different things to invest in. I think with empty nesters, you're in this unique position where it's kind of, you can kind of reset before you retire. You're no longer paying those children expenses. So you've got, like, you know, you're not paying for so many groceries and electricity and all of that. You might downsize, but it's a really unique period in your life where you can go, right, okay, I've got, you know, maybe, you know, 10, 20 years until I retire. How do I want to set that up? And how do I want my retirement to look? And, you know, thinking about things like, you're going to have increased healthcare costs. You know, have you set up a will? You know, maybe downsizing your house. There's so many things to think about, but it is a really, really unique time where you can kind of take a pause and be a bit selfish, but also kind of have that reset, which I think is really important, and also put those boundaries in for those adult children, because we're taking to leave home and we're asking parents for more. So
Sophie, how can this switch up change the outcome of their future?
Do you mean for empty nesters?
Yes.
Well, I guess the thing is with investing, we say a lot, you kind of want to have money invested that you don't need immediately. So ideally, the timeline minimum would be to invest for 5 years. Kind of back to your last question around, do people feel like they've missed the boat? We had a 90-year-old come to one of our events, which we were just like, oh my God, you're so cool. I think that the perception is, I'm 60, maybe I've sort of missed the boat, I can't invest. It's quite incredible what you can do in a really short space of time. So just for context, I was in about $50,000 worth of debt. I had no money in the stock market. I had opted out of my super, done so many stupid things with money. Now I have quite a significant amount invested in the stock market. I have investment properties. I think that what you can do, whatever age you are, is so much more than you might think. So I don't know. I think that it's really inspiring sometimes to think maybe what you can do in a year might feel a bit like you're not moving anywhere, but what you can do in 5 years is actually amazing.
Terrific. Really interesting, guys. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
And the podcast is called
The Curve.
The Curve. There you go.
Podcast.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you so much, girls.
Thanks, guys.